about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's go, let's be free with me. Be free. Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free. Let's go, let's be free.
Good morning, everyone. It's Jim here at TTU HQ, welcoming you to our 11th live AQA A-Level Sociology revision blast. And today we've got a special edition, much requested by students and teachers who are doing the global development option. So you asked for a special section or session on this. And Craig and Duncan there in the middle have put a fab session together to help us revise that increasingly popular topic. Duncan, Craig, lots more students doing that one.
Yeah, it's definitely grown in popularity, and we've had some requests for it, so here you are. Obviously, there might be some of you who don't do global development. You're very welcome. You have a go, but some of the questions might be tricky if you don't know the topic. But we're going to be going through all sorts of different aspects of global development today, looking at ways of measuring development, theories of development, and lots of bits of development in context, like conflict and environment and aid and all sorts of stuff coming up. So yeah, and lots of different activities. If you're watching live, and there are increasing numbers of people doing so, it's great to see you.
Fantastic.
Please do offer some answers in the chat window on the right hand side of your screen. So that might be A, B, C, or D, or in other cases we might ask you to write a bit more. We'll explain what. If you're watching on catch up, if you want to pause the video occasionally, give yourself a bit of extra time, you can do. And yeah, please do join in. Should we get cracking?
Fantastic. Have fun, everyone.
Let's go for it.
Great stuff. We're starting with a crack the code. So what you need to do here is look at this list of countries. And what I would like you to do is put these countries in order of GDP per capita. That means gross domestic product per head of the population, starting with the highest, so starting with the richest. country. And the first person to crack the code will get a shout out, and we'll be able to move on to the next activities. This could be half an hour if people are just staring at the screen or getting the wrong code. So let's hope someone gets it. Just while you're thinking about it, if you just think about GDP, it's an economic measure of development. If you can think about some of the other measures of development, maybe some people could suggest some in the chat window. Also, they could maybe talk about, as well as thinking about the economic measures of other alternative methods of development, think of some criticisms of using GDP as a measure. What weaknesses of that? Just looking at it, one thing you might want to think about is this per head of the population, is that does tend to favour or put countries with lower populations higher up the list than they might otherwise be. So you do get countries, for example, that might have a lot of money rolling about, very rich, but if they've got a very large population, that tends to put them a little lower. It will automatically go if someone gets the right code, by the way. So this is also what we call nominal GDP. There is also the PPP measure, which takes into account cost of living in those countries, which can make some difference. So, for example, Switzerland, for example, is a very wealthy country, but it it's very expensive to live there, and so with the PPP measure, that can impact it. But with nominal GDP, tends to be pretty high. It's not on the list though, so I'm not giving away anything away there. How are we doing? Some people got pretty close, I have to say. You have a think about.
There's quite a few good responses coming through.
Yeah, there are. People are along the right sort of lines.
Just they're briefly all there. Happy birthday to Jack. He was 18 yesterday. Can you get a whoop whoop?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, excellent. You actually did get a whoop whoop. One thing I'd sort of mention is that all of these countries are reasonably high up the list. I haven't put any LLEDCs in here or anything. They're all reasonably well-developed countries.
There also tends to be sort of like those who are highest in GDP per capita tend to produce one or two major resources, don't they? It's either finance or oil tends to be gives you quite a high GDP per capita.
It can do, yeah. Also think low population. A couple of those countries have very low populations, and that might push their GDP per capita up. Also think, which of those countries do you think of as developed in other ways, I suppose, because often the high GDP per capita goes alongside being democratic. And we've got a clue coming up there. It starts CE. That'll help people. A lot of people got C as the first one. Well done. Probably E as the second one might have surprised people, but it does have a very low population island. And although it's had periods of economic recession, it also, does have some, at times, and this is one of them. It's doing all right. Getting closer with some of these now. Someone's going to get it soon. I've seen some getting very close now.
There's quite a few responses coming through. So like there seems to be a little bit of a mix in the middle.
Someone's got it. Someone's got it. Who was it who got it? I think it was Jamie, was it, who got first to get there? If I missed who was the first to get it, but sorry about that, but well done. So there's our list. So as I mentioned, countries with small populations and generally pretty well off, like Luxembourg, Ireland, Sweden. But there, Qatar was high. I mean, some people might have not have expected Qatar to be higher than the UK, because we think of the UK as being a particularly wealthy country. But as Craig was mentioning, if you have countries with some particular resources and high amounts of resource in a particular area, they can score pretty highly. And South Korea is a pretty highly developed country as well. As I said, that none of these were LLEDCs. Okay, well done, those of you who got there. I'm going to hand over to Craig now for something called the Big Reveal.
Thank you. For regular viewers, the Big Reveal is where I give you 5 clues towards a topic area. If you haven't watched these before and you're just joining us for the first time, what we will do is we will slowly reveal 5 clues to a topic area, and you have to try and guess what the topic area is with as fewer clues as possible. So if we could have our first clue, please. First clue, global development. Obviously, one of the topic areas, one of the impacts in the topic area is environmental degradation. So what could, where might we discuss environmental degradation? Quite a few topic areas on global development where we discuss the environment, particularly the impacts of globalization. So we might give you another clue, disruption to education. So what topic area might we discuss disruption to education and environmental degradation?
Okay, and those two are quite different,
Two
aren't they? So
areas there.
something that
They are
something that
very
impacts
different.
both of them. Yeah, so something that impacts both of those. That might...
Yeah. Disruption to trade. Let's just throw a third one in. Some topic area, something that may happen in a developing nation that would disrupt their trade, their education, and cause degradation to the environment. It's quite a broad, obviously something that might be quite big, that, quite major, would have an impact on them. Something that may also see mass migration. If you think about why might we see mass migration in the developing world, seeing a couple of responses coming through. Somebody's got it already. And there we go. Political instability. That might be the one that gives it away. And there's quite a few responses coming through there. So we can reveal that it is the impacts of conflict, or the impacts of war and conflict, because some people had written war and conflict in there as well. All of these are potential impacts of war and conflict within the developing world, and likewise in the developing world. So when we look at this as part of the specification, and we can see this is one of the reasons why nations may struggle to develop, because of all of the disruption that happens with a conflict. Can we move on to our second one, please, Jim? Okay, so changes to employment. What topic area might we discuss changes to employment in the developing world, perhaps from informal to formal employment, as a clue? Quite a few areas where we might discuss changes to employment.
Pretty broad.
It is very broad, and that's the thing is with this activity, isn't it? We start broad and we get a little bit more specific. Urbanization. What area of the specification might we link urbanization to?
Now there you go. That was going to be my answer. That was going to be my answer from the first one.
Well, that would be a big link, because obviously with urbanization we do get massive changes from employment from agriculture to industry, to different industries. How it can cause environmental issues. Again, as you can see, it's like another area of specification. I think global development is really good at showing how lots of these things link together. It's very kind of broad topic area, really, isn't it? But environmental issues. What else might cause environmental issues? We've already seen that war and conflict might cause environmental issues. What else might cause environmental issues? What might encourage foreign investment? What process in development might encourage foreign investment? This one's getting a little bit more narrow now. And what might change the economic output? So particularly the goods that are produced, what process might cause changes in the economic output? And there's somebody, Danielle has come through with a good response there. There's another response coming through. So we've seen a couple of different responses. We've seen globalization, industrialization. Jim, can we reveal the answer, please? It is the impacts of industrialization. Of course, industrialization means that sort of people are not working in agriculture anymore. They're working in specific industries. Now, with the global development, we can talk about tourism industries. We can talk about particularly textiles and some of what we see as being secondary goods industries. We can also talk about agribusiness as well. Obviously, usually linked in with urbanization, because people move to the towns and cities in order to gain employment. It can have environmental issues, of course, if we're building lots of factories. Part of the process of development, which we may look at with some of the activities that Duncan are going to do, is it encourages foreign investment, particularly from large TNCs. And of course, this will change the economic output from being from primary goods over to secondary goods, and even sort of like some movement towards the service sector as well. Okay, let's look at our third big reveal, please. Okay, so increased life expectancy. What topic area on global development might we talk about increased life expectancy? There's one that kind of jumps straight out, really, isn't there? Increased life expectancy, one of the subtopics. Let's look at our second one. Just to throw you slightly a little bit, Esther's come up with a response there. I'm not going to give the responses away to just now, just to let people guess. But the input of NGOs, input of non-governmental organisations, how might they impact, and how might that link to a certain area? If we think about what non-governmental organisations, what some non-governmental organisations do, which is our next one, mass immunisation programs. I think Esther got in there very quickly. Mass immunisation programs, what area of the topic might we be talking about here? Let's look at our fourth clue. Centralised healthcare. We're starting to really give this away now. Esther's guess is still holding up. And fifth one, biopiracy. Biopiracy is where companies will, where you will see sort of like piracy of medicines and medical techniques, usually by large TNCs who will take over, who will control the patents of medical products.
Pharmaceuticals.
Yes, so we've got that coming up with as well. Pharmaceuticals. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you, Duncan. It's clearly too early in the morning for me to say big words. Okay, so let's look at our big reveal. There's a couple of people who got that in there. It's the impact of adopting Western healthcare systems. Obviously, a big debate within global development is whether we should center on the healthcare systems that already exist in the developing world and improving those, or whether they should move to a Western model that is usually based upon privatization and more central medical advice rather than people-centered approaches. Okay, so that takes us through our big reveal. I am going to go back over now to Duncan for a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Off you go, Duncan.
Cheers. Some great answers there, and well done, Esther, for coming in so quickly with health there. I think that was one of our earliest ever correct answers on a big reveal. Okay, we've got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 now. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you for 5 of something, 4 of something else, 3 of something else, 2 of something, and 1 of something. There's going to be some music while we look at it. So we're looking at 5 stages of development, according to Rostow. 4 examples of developing countries. So there's lots to choose from there. So I'm expecting lots of answers there. 3 modernization theorists. 3 examples of modernization theorists. I've possibly given one away earlier in the activity. There's a clue. 2 other theories of development. So theories other than modernization theory. And an example of a prominent neoliberal, someone that you would think of as being a neoliberal. So there are likely to be answers that you give that aren't the ones that come up on the screen, and that's absolutely fine. So shall we get cracking with a bit of music, see what you come up with? So just write 5 and then the stages of development, 4 and some examples. And don't feel you have to wait till you've got all of them. You can write some, just let us know which question it's answering. Okay, good luck.
5, 4.
I've got to admit, I think the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 music is my favorite music of all of our other activities.
It's pretty groovy.
It's very laid back for 10:30 in the morning on a Wednesday.
It is. It feels a bit like Austin Powers or something. I don't. There's a nice up-to-date nice contemporary cultural reference for
Got a kind of nice, like, kind of 60s vibe to it, doesn't it? Yeah. It's not really global development, but it's kind of still got a nice vibe to it.
Well, it's about the right era for most of the theorists in this particular topic.
Yeah.
All right, we're getting some developing countries coming through from Unicorn Lover. Oh, and Jack's come through with some stages of development from Rostow. Very good. Yeah. Katie too. I'm going to suggest some other theories or some names of theorists. Well done, Katie. If you do an answer, if you can say which question it's in answer to, that'll help in terms of feedback to it. Okay, got some more examples of developing countries.
4, 3, 2, 1.
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing at a suggestion for a prominent neoliberal. Wasn't who I had in mind. Okay, well, shall we have a look? We had some great answers there. There were a couple of questions no one suggested anything for, so people were running scared of a couple of the answers. Oh, Daniela's come in with loads of stuff there.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, well done. That's great. So quite a few people got this one. Traditional society, preconditions to take off, drive to maturity, and the age of mass consumption, the age of high mass consumption. There's, because of the era that Rostow was writing in, he sort of had this kind of aeroplane metaphor. It's the sort of the jet age. Okay, if we look at lots of people got that one. Brilliant, well done. If we look at the next one, there's lots and lots of countries you could suggest for developing countries. I went with Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Zimbabwe, but we had loads of good ones in there. I mean, an interesting one is, when does a country stop being a developing country? Obviously, we got some suggestions of some pretty wealthy developing potentially countries that we wouldn't think of as being developed in the sense of being a kind of yeah, go on, Craig.
It comes down, I was going to say, it comes down to sort of the different type of measurements that people use, because obviously sort of like you look at the kind of the measurements, the traditional measurements of first world, second world, third world, which is kind of it doesn't really exist anymore, obviously, because of the end of the Cold War. Then you've got the global north and global south. There's lots of different ways in which we define a developing nation. The one we mentioned earlier on, sort of like with LLEDCs, I get all my things confused there. Sorry, there's too many LLEDCs, and that measurement. Sorry, and obviously, sort of like what we tend to refer to, and when I'm teaching global development, it's always that having to very strongly pronounce developed and developing and newly developing nations. So there's lots of different measurements for it.
Yeah, because we have got some of. Yeah, I was just going to say, but there are some people have listed countries that we would traditionally think of as being developing countries, but they might be considered newly industrialized countries, or they're countries that are quite high GDP, although once you start translating that to per capita, end up coming much lower down. But so if we're going by an economic measure, are quite well developed, but less developed in some other areas. I'm thinking of sort of China and India and things that have come up. They're developing in lots of ways, but there's also a lot of money there. Okay, what was number 3? What was we asking for 3? 3 modernization theorists, and we had some good answers for that came. So well done for those of you that got those. I went with Rostow, Parsons, and Inglehart. I think we had a couple of other suggestions in the chat window. Obviously, there are other modernization theorists are available.
Had Sachs, Hoselitz, and a few others there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, if we look at the two of the other, and there are lots of possible ones you could come up with, theories of development. In the chat window, we had dependency theory and people-centered development, which are great answers. Also suggested neoliberalism and world systems theory. Okay, so well done in the chat window. And yeah, if you didn't know those ones, so ones to have a look at. And then we did have the one, apart from the suggestion of Jeremy Corbyn, the one suggestion we had in the chat window of a prominent neoliberal was Milton Friedman, and it was also the one I went for. Again, other neoliberals are available, but it's quite a good example, and you can obviously it's all a long time ago now, but you can talk about his work in Chile and the impact of neoliberalism on Chile.
We'll leave Chile out of it, I think. But I mean, there's another one who's been in the news recently, Dumbrus and Moyo. because she was part of the Racial Disparities Commission, the Sewell report. She was an advisor on that as well. Obviously, very neoliberal in her views, as sort of like, you know, that aid is a form of welfare dependency. So you could have put, there's one.
Yeah, very good.
Mind.
Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, well done. So some really good answers there. We're going to look at an on-balance activity now. So this is where we can have a bit of a debate or a discussion, almost like we're writing an essay. We can look at two sides of an argument, or in this case, the strengths and weaknesses of a theory. So what I'd like us to look at are the strengths and weaknesses, but we'll start with the strengths of dependency theory as an explanation for development and underdevelopment. And it's always worth remembering, and the questions often talk about that development and underdevelopment explanations, not just for why countries develop, but also why some countries fail to develop. So thinking about what you know about dependency theory, and some of you obviously are familiar with it because we got it in some answers in the chat window, can you think, first of all, of some strengths of dependency theory? In what ways do you think it might be a pretty good theory or a pretty good explanation of development and underdevelopment? Can we think of any strengths of the theory? Okay, so if we think about dependency theory, perhaps think about Andre Gunter Frank and his criticisms of modernization theory, essentially his explanation for why countries don't just follow in the footsteps of Britain and America and develop in the same way, his kind of Marxist or neo-Marxist criticism of that. What's good about it? How is it? Can we think of any strengths?
Just a random fact about Andre Gunter Frank: his dissertation supervisor was Friedman.
I remember. Yes, I remember reading that. Yeah, that is very random, isn't it? You can't imagine they'd have seen eye to eye. Yeah,
no,
can't imagine they'd have seen eye to eye.
Grade.
Well, perhaps Friedman was a very, very had great integrity as a educationalist and was able to.
It would have been an interesting.
Put aside, you know. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Just imagine you got this as a 10-mark question. Yeah. Outline and explain two strengths of dependency theory, or perhaps apply and analyze two ways in which dependency theory offers a good explanation for development and underdevelopment. Anyone going to suggest any?
You could also think about, obviously, sort of dependency theory is essentially a Marxist theory. It's rooted in Marxism. So, how might people have been exploited across that?
Okay, Jack's come through historically. Yeah, some things coming through here. So Jack said it's easy to spot inequality and misuse of resources. So that what they're talking about, part of what Frank's talking about, is that there is great inequality and that resources might not be used. And Jack's saying that's true. You can see that kind of objectively. We can see it. There are many examples that support the ideas that colonialism and neo-colonialism keep countries from developing, like the Democratic Republic of Congo. So thanks for that, Daniela. Yeah, so some good responses coming through there.
Neo-colonialism, isn't it? It's a really key term with Frank's theory, neo-colonialism.
Absolutely, great key term. And reasons why the West are dominant. The Frank's able to do that. Exploitation is offers an explanation for why countries haven't modernized or developed. Great. So I gave a couple of reasons, but you've come up with some brilliant ones there as well. It considers the history of empire and slavery, which Daniela went on to modernize that with neocolonialism, which is excellent. But there is that history which is kind of ignored in the modernization theory to a large extent. How did countries start getting these preconditions for takeoff, etc.? Well, they took over other countries and made people work for no money, etc. So considering that history is important. And then there's this idea that it doesn't blame the victim. When modernization theory offers an explanation for underdevelopment, it's because of flaws in the kind of value systems or the behavior of people in the developing world. And Frank sort of says, well, actually, that's kind of victim blaming. Maybe it's the rich who are at fault. Okay, you might find this one easier. Can you think of some weaknesses of dependency theory? What's wrong with it? Why? Can you think of any ways in which it isn't a good explanation, or it's a limited explanation? Give you a minute or two to think of those, because some great answers came through from the last one. If people are going to give extended answers, I want to give you time to do so. What's wrong with the theory? I think quite a lot of people quite a lot of people who are interested in global development and sociologists who are interested in global development tend to sort of see quite a lot of truth in dependency theory, and because they probably get a bit frustrated with modernization theory, and dependency theory comes in with what on the face of it seem more realistic arguments, but then there's aspects of it that perhaps don't seem right, and also we can think about when it was written. That might be an area that we want to think about.
The one thing I was going to point out is that, like, obviously, with it being a theory that's based on principles of Marxism, some of those criticisms of Marxism generally can be leveled at dependency theory. So if you look at some of our criticisms of kind of traditional Marxism, although I think Gunther Frank will be seen more of in that kind of neo-Marxist view, but some of those criticisms of traditional Marxism may be very apt.
Yeah. So we had one come through here. It's very pessimistic. Yeah. Okay. And it doesn't provide many or any practical solutions for development. That's a good one, actually. I don't think I mentioned that on the thing that, Frank's criticism of the current situation, the global capitalist system is quite convincing. His couple of suggestions for solutions don't feel very convincing, but essentially there's the kind of breakaway, so kind of and there's sort of isolation, so essentially to follow China or follow Cuba, neither of which seem particularly appealing necessarily if you were trying to decide how you wanted to develop. It pays little attention to internal disintegrations, and it explains conditions that apply to the 1960s more than today. Yeah, okay, very good. It's outdated, and it's it looks at the class system as a global thing, doesn't it? It doesn't really consider inequalities within countries. So we've got that it's outdated. Frank published this in 1971, but as you rightly say, it's sort of writing about the 60s essentially, and it's arguably quite simplistic and rigid. You're either developing or developed, your core or satellite. You're and it doesn't suggest much in the way of fluidity. World systems theory from Wallerstein kind of adds a degree of nuance and complexity to Frank's original ideas. Okay, well done. Some great answers there. Really, really good. I'm going to pass you back to Craig. Okay, well done, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Duncan. Yeah, Wallerstein passed away last year, didn't he? Emmanuel Wallerstein. Yeah, it was a really prominent kind of thinker, sort of like in development, that we look at as well. Okay, let's look at the 60-second challenge. This is on aid. 60-second challenge. I'm going to give you 60 seconds to match 5 descriptions of aid to the different types of aid. So you will have a brief description on the left-hand side of the screen, and on the right-hand side of the screen, you will have a type of aid. And what you need to do is match those up. Could we see the responses, please? Yep. What I want you to do is just put those answers in the in the chat box on the right hand side. So it could be A4 or so on and so forth. So try and match up the definition on the left hand side to the type of aid on the right hand side. We've got 60 seconds starting now. I think. Oh, there we go. So if we match the definition to the type of aid on the right hand side. "30 seconds left, get a couple of responses."
You can just type in letter and number.
Okay. Okay, so Daniela's come through with a couple of responses there. Esther's coming through. As we get to the end of the 60 seconds, we will see a rush of responses there. Obviously, aid has been in the news over the COVID epidemic, because the UK has reduced the amount of overseas aid it is going to do below the 0.7% of GNP. Sorry, of gross national product, GDP. Sorry, not GNP. It's one of those things that's sort of like, let's anyway, that's a political question. I'll leave that one. So let's look at our answers. Okay, so we have A is for aid directly given from one nation to another is what we call bilateral aid. B, aid distributed by a third or subsequent parties to nations in need is seen as multilateral aid. Loans that have to be spent in the country that administered them, and a lot of aid is actually given this way. It's what's called tied aid. So often aid benefits the donor country's economy more than it does the recipient. Aid given at a time of crisis, this tends to be sort of like things with earthquakes, hurricanes, natural disasters, humanitarian aid, and aid administered by non-governmental organizations, NGOs, charities, based upon public donations, and this would be seen as charitable aid. So there's quite a few good responses there. We've got Jamie, who got those responses correct. Jack was correct as well, and Esther. So some really good knowledge of aid there. Let's move on to our final activity for today, and this is, as you can see, it's like I'm going through it on my computer, and I've started the 60-second challenge on my computer as well, to make sure I've got the answers in front of me. Okay, so the connection wall here, I want you to work out the 4 groups of phrases here, and there are 16 phrases. 16 words, phrases. Actually, what we're looking at here is agencies of development. So we need to organize these into 4 different agencies of development. So if we could maybe spot, first of all, the 4 different types of agencies of development that are here, and then we can organize those the names that are on the screen into those different categories.
So yellow snow suggests charities.
Charities. What do we tend to refer to charities? There are 4 charities in there, but we tend to refer to them as a specific term within global development. But you are right, there are charities in there.
We've got lots of these sort of what's the word? Yeah, like acronyms in global development, haven't we? So NGO, well done, yeah.
So that's one agency of development.
I think we've got another acronym. Have we got another acronym? I think we might have.
There is another acronym in there, yeah. These are the things that facilitate development. So these are the organizations that facilitate development. So can we think there's 2 other acronyms in there, actually, really?
Well done,
TNCs is in there as well. So we've got NGOs, we've got TNCs. One more acronym. That's okay. It's good that you've tuned in. Even if you don't do the topic, you always learn something on these things. But we also have TNCs, we have NGOs. What are the other GOs that we have? I don't think we've mentioned them yet, have we?
I'm not sure we have. So things like I'll give one of them away. Something like the World Bank. What does that? Or the United Nations. I'm giving away one of your sets here, aren't I, Craig? But what would we call those?
It is the first one.
And then, of course, we've got.
And then there is the final grouping, which might be a little bit straightforward.
Yeah.
What else can we see more of in there?
As well as organisations, we've got something else there, haven't we?
Who also facilitate development. Okay, there we go. So let's look at our first one, which was international governmental organizations. Can you spot the 4 IGOs?
After that,
can you spot the 4 international governmental organizations in there?
If you were watching very carefully,
if you were
something may have happened for a moment. They may have gone yellow. Any ideas?
Yeah.
International government organisations. I gave them away as well, really. So between me and the any ideas? What have we got?
Organizations, that international governmental organizations are organizations that basically look after things like trade and they look after funding. Okay, so we've got World Bank coming through, United Nations, the IMF. Yeah, there's 3 of them.
There's one other on there.
One that particularly people were talking about. Yeah,
Jamie's
WTO. Obviously, lots of people were talking about that around Brexit and adopting WTO, World Trade Organization rules on tariffs. Okay, let's look at our next one, which is NGOs. Can we spot the 4 NGOs in there, or 4 NGOs or charities, as some people have already identified? Can we spot the 4 charities in there or NGOs? Which of those 4 are charities or NGOs?
Jack's come
Save
in.
the Children, ActionAid, Oxfam, UNICEF. Perfect. Well done, Jack. Our next one was TNCs. Esther's got the correct answer as well there as we come through. Our next one are TNCs, transnational corporations. Which of those are there? Jamie's coming with the correct answer as well. Just takes a little bit longer for the thread to come through there. So we've moved on to TNCs now. Which of these are transnational corporations? This one should be straightforward a little bit.
A few have come through, I think. Jack's come
We have started
up with some
through.
Yeah.
And these are some of the big transnational, the larger transnational corporations. So we've got Eon, we've got Total, we've got Royal Dutch Shell, General Election. Obviously General Electric. It must be a
politics student.
So General Electric. And let's think about what is our final topic. What is our final topic then? If we have the United Kingdom, United States, France, and China, what could our final grouping be? Lots of people coming through with the TNCs now. There's obviously a slight delay on my thread here. What could our final grouping be then? What do those 4 things have in common? What is their commonality?
Don't overthink this. Just what are they? They're all.
Yeah, don't overthink this. Yeah. They
are nations.
Nation states. And obviously we talk about nation states rather than particular governments because of the continuity of a nation's policy on things like aid rather than a specific government. And that's us done. That's our last activity today.
Wow.
Some fantastic answers there. Really good.
So much crossover, isn't there, in global development, particularly if you study A-level geography or A-level economics.
Yeah.
And it's often said that development economics and the development unit in geography is the most popular, one of the most popular and interesting parts of the studies. So really interesting stuff. You can see why global development is an increasingly popular option for sociology students.
Yeah,
and it's increasingly popular at undergraduate level as well. With lots of people sort of like in their first and second year undergraduate courses or on access to HE courses or foundation years of sociology are doing a lot of global development at the moment because it's a really contemporary area for sociologists to study, particularly as we live in such a global environment now.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff.
Fantastic session.
You've got a geography one coming up, haven't you?
We have, If you want to hang around, if you want to learn more about coastal landscapes and coastal systems, don't laugh, Duncan. It's very important.
I'm a big fan.
I live on the coast.
But that's really good. Great session. So we're going to have to close it there in the next minute or so. So huge thanks to Duncan for getting it very early for Duncan at 10:30 in the morning, and Craig as well. Hopefully you found it useful. As always, we ask you if you found it useful to give us the thumbs up on YouTube. Duncan's showing you how to do it. If you're watching live as well as if you're watching on replay, partly to make Duncan and Craig particularly happy this morning, but also to help the YouTube algorithm suggest this session to other A-level sociology students taking the global option. The more thumbs up, the more likely it is that they will see this as something that might be worth a watch. I'm sure they'll find it useful if you did too. And don't forget, you can download the PowerPoint if you want to take a look at all the slides and all of our previous other 10 sessions. If you go to tutortu.net/live and watch all the replays and download all the PowerPoints, not just for sociology, but we've got lots of other subjects as well there, psychology, business, and the rest. Fantastic. Right, we're going to sign off now. I think we're back again next week. Duncan, Craig, do we know what the topic is yet, or are we still working that one out?
Yeah, I think we're doing a year 12 topic mix, so it'll be like a mixture of stuff from across the first year of the A-level. So
fantastic.
Nice
brilliant
mixed
stuff.
bag.
Yeah, really good. Looking forward to that. So for now, we'll say see you next time. Thank you.
Okay, see you guys. Bye.